Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1, or should I say Stop and Go F2 for this, our reactions to the Formula 2 from the Hungarian GP weekend. A weekend all about Kimi Antonelli. If it wasn't all about him already. One of the biggest rising stars in motorsport today, and a weekend of two halves. A disappointing Saturday, a rejoiceful, that's not a word, think of a better word, and a good Sunday. It was all going so well, I was almost sounded professional, and I think rejoiceful might be a word, I could have said rejoiceful. You know what I meant. Anyway, we're going to get into all of this right now. It wouldn't be a Stop and Go F1 video if it was professional, for God's sake. Here we go. So, before we get in, like and subscribe, of course. Thank you to our members, Dakota, the Joyous James, and Robin Myers. If you want to join the membership, there's a link in the description. Let's talk Formula 2, because, like I said in the Formula 3 video that went out earlier this morning, Formula 3 was a bit dull. It wasn't a great weekend for Formula 3 this weekend, but for Formula 2, my goodness, we've had two very different but equally entertaining races. So let's start with the sprint. It's for sure on pole, Kush Miney alongside. And here's the thing that made this race so interesting, was the mix of tyres. It was nearly a 50-50 split of people starting on the hards compared to people starting on the softs. Kimi Antonelli is the highest qualified driver on the starting on the soft tyre. On the formation lap, Zane Maloney stalls the car. He was third place in this race, so a great place here for Zane Maloney, who still is third in the championship, despite not having the greatest middle sector of this season. Started the season incredibly well, but has kind of fallen off a little bit as the season has gone on. In a great place to gain some points back here, but unfortunately stalls and has to start from the pit lane. As the race starts, for sure gets away well. Antonelli is able to get up past Miney for P2, and there's a very, very aggressive defence from Richard Verschoor on Antonelli to keep P1. This on lap 3 into turn 1. Very much moving and the braking, very aggressive, but manages to keep the place, but only for one lap, because on lap 4 Antonelli is able to take the lead. Kush Miney now on the back of Verschoor, challenging him for P2. But as we get to lap 10, this is when that changeover happens. Now it looks like those on the hard tyres have got a lot more pace than those on the softs. There's a fantastic move further down between Hauger and Victor Martins, but Hauger isn't able to make it stick. Martin stays P4 for now. And now Antonelli, who's on those soft tyres, who was leading by quite some margin at the start of this race, not only is he now lapping slower than Verschoor, who is behind him, but he keeps on locking up. It is lockup after lockup after lockup from Antonelli here. He's trying to keep the pace, he's trying to save the tyres, but neither is happening at this point, and it's just getting worse. Verschoor now within a second of Antonelli on lap 14, and now he's just all over him, and the pressure that Verschoor was putting onto Antonelli at this point, Antonelli has a huge lockup again, but manages to keep the lead. Kush Miney, by the way, if I was any of the top three at this point, I would have wanted to be Kush Miney, because he's in P3, he's less than a second off the back of Verschoor, but he's just sitting back and watching. We've seen already at the start of the race that massively aggressive defence that Verschoor had against Antonelli. You've got to be thinking, if you're Kush Miney, just sit back here, because Antonelli's tyres are gone. Verschoor is definitely the faster driver, but this is for a race win. Antonelli might come back with the same aggression that Verschoor showed him, and they could both be taken out. Kush Miney can just go through and win the race. We get another huge lockup for Antonelli, though, into turn 1 that sees him go off the track and fall from first to third place. So in the end, Verschoor didn't have to do anything to take the lead of this race into turn 1. Now he's under pressure from Victor Martins from P3, so the pressure is not up for Kimi Antonelli here on lap 17, lap 17 of 28. because Martins is now all over the back of him and is able to get past him pretty soon afterwards, which follows another lockup. Antonelli now falling behind Fittipaldi. He's down to P5, and then Hauger passes him for P6. Antonelli, who looks so strong at the start of this race, the tyres are just gone by lap 18. Antonelli has to pit from the race. Pits on hard tyres, comes out in 22nd place. The sprint race where you're not normally supposed to pit in the F2 sprint. But yeah, Antonelli has not managed his tyres well at all, comes out in 22nd. Ollie Behrman, meanwhile, the Prima teammate of Kimi Antonelli, on the same strategy, on the softs, but has managed them a little bit better. He passes Bortoleto. He's up to P8 on lap 20. But realistically, everyone on the soft starts to struggle now, and people are starting to fall a bit further down. Bortoleto also has to pit from the soft tyres. The second rookie in the top 10 to have to pit. It really shows here the difference between the more experienced drivers and the rookies. Because there's no doubt Kimi Antonelli, as we'll see later on, is fantastic, a fantastic driver, but managing those tyres is one of the hardest things to do. We see it not just in F3 or F2, even in F1. That was the difference between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri last year, is Lando is much more experienced in keeping those tyres in the perfect window, which Piastri has struggled with, and I think still struggles with to this day. He's getting better at it, and this might be a factor that comes into the F1 race later on, but that's the big challenge I think that a lot of younger drivers have, is maintaining these tyres the best they can. And that's where you see a difference here between an Antonelli and a Behrman, because there's no doubt that Antonelli has had the better year than Behrman so far this year, but every now and again you see that kind of experience shine through, and Behrman being able to make those tyres last a bit longer shows that extra year that he's had here in Formula 2, although Behrman's feature race was god-awful. Anyway, Bortoleto pits from, we've done that bit already. There is Hajar now, who passes Hauger for P5, having that hard tyre advantage, and then he's up past Fittipaldi for P4 a lap later. There is a massive lockup for Fittipaldi as Hauger gets past him, and you've just got to think that Fittipaldi, who is also on the soft tyres, his tyres are gone as well now. Colapinto passes Fittipaldi, and Ollie Behrman is very quick chasing in Fittipaldi as well. Paul Aron up to P9 before Fittipaldi has a big puncture and is completely out of the race. Ollie Behrman is in P7, but not for long, because Aron on the faster tyres gets past him on lap 25, and then Barnard takes P8 off of Behrman on the same lap. Behrman just falling outside the points in the sprint. There's an incredible three-wide battle here between Correa, Crawford and Ollie Behrman. Yes, three of them all on the same side. The way that they didn't crash, I have no idea. But then we cross the line. It is Vershaw who wins. From Miney, from Martins. Hajar in 4th. Then Hauger 5th. Colapinto 6th. Aaron in 7th. And then Taylor Barnard is the last of the point scorers in 8th. Or so we thought. Because hours later, Richard Vershaw was disqualified for a technical infringement. The second time this year that Richard Vershaw has had a win taken away from him hours after the race. You've got to feel for him there. Nothing he could have done about it. But them the rules. So it was Kush Miney who won the race from Victor Martins. A good weekend for Victor Martins overall this weekend. Double podium finish for him. Let's go on to the feature then, because my God, the feature is fun. So, let's have a look at the starting grid. So, Paul Aron, who is currently second in the championship, is on pole. He had his first ever pointless weekend in Formula 2 last time out at Silverstone. He's been doing fantastically well up until this point, but is looking to claw back some points in this race. Enzo Fittipaldi is alongside him. As for the other championship protagonists, our championship leader is Isaac Hajar. He has qualified 3rd, and 3rd place in the championship is Zane Maloney. He is 8th. Now, drama immediately, because Isaac Hadjar, who has qualified third, our championship leader, has not made it out of the pit lane in time. Some kind of mistake from the team. Got their timings wrong. We see the replay. He's driving down the pit lane. The pit lane closes. He can't go out. He's too late. He must start from the pit lane. Huge advantage now to Paul Aron. Your championship leader is starting from the pit lane. You're on pole position. There is a deficit of 20 points here. This is the easiest Aron will ever have it. This is a gift to Paul Aron in terms of the championship. We know we haven't got that many races left, and it's a close one. And, coming off the back of that pointless weekend in Silverstone, this is a gift from the racing gods to Paul Aron. Let's see how it goes. And as the race starts, Victor Martins, who qualified 5th, is able to take the lead. Paul Aron has an awful start, and as he goes into turn 1, has a huge lockup, nearly goes right into the back of Victor Martins, and after everything is said and done, Paul Aron goes from 1st to 7th place on the first lap. Dreadful, dreadful start for the man looking to become Formula 2 champion. Meanwhile, Fittipaldi is now in P2, and he's on the back of Victor Martins. Real feisty stuff between the two of them, side by side, really getting the elbows out for the lead, but Martins is able to keep it. One of the big gainers of this first lap was Ollie Behrman. He gained 6 places on lap 1, and that's the last good thing that happened to him in this race. Another bad race for Ollie Behrman. Martins starts to pull away now as he breaks the 1 second gap from Fittipaldi on lap 5. And we have an incredible battle between Antonelli and Zane Maloney. Now, I have said many times there is only one place you can realistically overtake at the Hungarian. Kimi Antonelli does not listen to me, and thank God for that, because he was overtaking all over the place. And a wonderful little move past Maloney. But then Maloney says, no, we're not done here. Maloney takes the place back, and then Antonelli goes, no, we're not done here either. He takes the place back again. The two change positions 3 times in a matter of like 4 or 5 corners. But Antonelli comes out ahead in P3 on lap 7. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. Meanwhile, Paul Aron is trying to make his way back through the grid. He goes for a dive bomb. He hits the back of Maloney. Both of them spin. Both of them are out. This brings out the safety car. Oh my God, Paul Aron, what have you done? Absolutely bottled it. Like I said, handed an opportunity to regain some of the points that he missed out on in Silverstone. Hadjar, who would be 3rd on the grid, pit lane start, you're in P1. You haven't won a race so far this year, but your amazing consistency has put you into this place where you have been championship leader for a majority of the year. You're now in P2. Awful start. Can't get away from that. Then follow that up with a lockup, which pushes you down to P7. Now you're fighting through. This dive bomb was never on. I think everyone watching saw this coming in slow motion, because he goes for the dive bomb. I think it was Hauger, but I might be wrong, on the inside. But Maloney is just in front of him. And it's just like you see that gap closing and closing and closing, and you just go, there was never, ever going to be anything else but contact there. And you just think, what has happened here? I think he's just collapsed under the pressure. Because, he, like I've said, gifted an opportunity here to get these points. And just throws it away. It reminded me a lot of last year, Frederic Vesti at the Italian Grand Prix, where it's him and Porsche towards the end of the year fighting for the title, and Vesti just has a stupid little spin and it costs him everything. This was very similar, but he didn't just ruin his race, he also ruined the race of Zane Maloney, and just basically, I think he's handed the championship to Hadjar. I know we've got a few races left to go and anything can happen. But when you're given opportunities like this, you've got to take them. Especially if you are someone like Paul Aron, who isn't signed to a young driver program. You know, he was with Mercedes. Mercedes dropped him in, I think it was like November of last year. He came into F2 this year, one of the drivers who hasn't got a like a parent team in Formula One. So not only are you driving for your career, but you're driving to show how good you are, so that maybe someone can take a chance on you in Formula One, or if Formula One doesn't work, maybe someone else will take a chance on you, maybe IndyCar, WEC, Formula E, whatever it might be. And Aron has been fantastic up until now. When we get to this point in the championship where it really matters, you can't afford to throw things away, especially when you're given a gift like this. You can't then squander it, and that's exactly what he did. I could not believe it, because we're lap 7 of a 38 lap race. He's made an awful start. There's no getting away from that. But you have a hell of a lot of time to regain that. It just felt like, I think that start was just so in his head that he's like, right, I've got to recover, I've got to do it as fast as I can. And the move was never there, and he just went for it. And you could see how beaten up he was afterwards. And he came over the radio and said, I've ruined my race. It's like, yeah, you have. You've also ruined Zane Maloney's race. But yeah, real head loss from Paul Aron here. It's a real shame as well. As I said, we have got a few races left, and you never know what's going to happen, because, going into this race, you wouldn't think Hadjar pit lane start, Paul Aron Bottles it, but there you go. It's a shame. And, I was thinking about it before, in terms of our championship picture now, you got Hadjar leading from Aron, and I think Bortoletto's P3 now. He might be wrong. Bortoletto was Zane Maloney. And we talk about F2 being this feeder series for F1. The two people that are going to go from F2 to F1 this year are Ollie Behrman and Kimi Antonelli, both of whom will not win the title. Maybe, I think Antonelli might still be in it, maybe, but it's very, very doubtful. Behrman's definitely not in it, because Prema have not been great this year, and there's just been a lot of mistakes, and he hasn't been consistent. But Behrman got his position because of an amazing season last year, mixed in with that Ferrari drive in Saudi. Antonelli got his drive, which hasn't been announced, but will be announced, because he's this great up-and-coming young driver, and he's done pretty well this year. Before this weekend, I would have said Antonelli's done okay, but this weekend has changed my opinion on him. I think this weekend has shown how fantastic he can be. When you look at F2, and the two drivers that are going to go up to F1, both haven't had great seasons, and then you look at your top 4, Paul Aron, right, hasn't got an F1 junior contract, so will be very difficult for him to get it anywhere. I don't see him going anywhere. You've got Isaac Hadjar, who looks like he will become Formula 2 champion. But realistically, I don't see Red Bull ever taking an opportunity on him, because he's not that level. Despite being the guy who probably will win the Formula 2 championship, I don't think he's good enough to get into Formula 1 right now, which is a weird thing to say. But I don't think Isaac Hadjar is in the ideas for Red Bull right now. I think, if anything, Arvid Lindblad in Formula 3 has more chance of getting into Formula 1 than Isaac Hadjar does in a Red Bull from the Red Bull Juniors, which is a mad thing to say. Then you've got someone like Bortoletto, who I think is fantastic. Thought he was great in Formula 3 last year, did a real championship season, from the start, fantastic stuff. This year has shown how fantastic he can be in Formula 2. But then the issue arises with him. He's a McLaren junior. And McLaren don't really put their juniors in the car unless it's not going well for them. They're not going to drop a Norris or a Piastri for a Bortoletto, no matter how good he is. And I don't see them having that kind of connection with a Williams or something to allow him to go in there. So who knows if Bortoletto can make it. Then you have Maloney, who's even in a worse position of being a Sauber junior. And I mean, Sauber aren't taking on because they never have in this new iteration of the Sauber junior team, forgetting people like, Raikkonen, I think, was a Sauber junior. But in this new iteration of the Sauber junior academy, they've never taken a driver into Formula 1. So our top 4 drivers in the championship in Formula 2 might never make it into Formula One. And it just makes you think, what's the point? Because realistically, Behrman was signed for what he did last year, not for what he did this year. Antonelli was signed because of his junior career, not for what he's done this year. So what is the point? It's great driving, and I love watching it, but as a feeder series, what has this actually done for anyone to get into Formula One? I don't think it's done anything. And you have people like Théo Pourchaire last year. He's not getting in because he's a Sauber junior. You have Frédéric Vesti. He was second place in the championship last year. Mercedes junior driver, completely overlooked for Antonelli. He's not getting in. Jack Doohan might get into Formula One, but also it might be Mick Schumacher. It's Formula 2 is in a really weird place right now, where it seems like it doesn't really matter how well you do anymore. Which is a really weird thing to say. The only thing you could possibly say is like Behrman has got his Formula 1 drive because of how good his Formula 2 season was last year, not this year. So you could say, oh, well, look, that's fed that. But then he's been rubbish this year. And I know the Prima's not been there. And I know there's like, he had Paul in Saudi, but that got taken away because he went to Formula 1. And there was like, in Imola, he was looking good, but in the pit stop and blah, blah, blah. I'm the biggest Behrman fan, and I will jump through hoops to say how good he actually is. But he hasn't been good enough to be in Formula 1 this year. So it's a bit of a rant, and I haven't made any notes on this. I'm just kind of spitting stuff off the top of my head right now. But F2 is in a weird place. Anyway, back to this F2 race we're talking about. The safety car's out, and Paul Aron's out of the race. The pits are open, though, for Martins, Fittipaldi, Bortoleto, Hauger, Behrman, O'Sullivan, Colapinto, Dirksen, Correa, Crawford, Hadjar, and Stanek. They all pit from the soft tyre across to the hards. In terms of track position, Antonelli is now in the lead from Vasseur, and then from Maini. They're all on the alternative strategy. Safety car ends on lap 11, and it's a fantastic getaway from Kimi Antonelli. Meanwhile, Martins sailed past Maini for P3. That's on lap 15. Bortoleto and Fittipaldi both get past Cordial for 6th and 7th. Then Cordial just continues to go backwards as he loses 8th place to Taylor Barnard. Bortoleto has been fighting to get past Miata for lap after lap after lap. Finally does it on lap 19. That's for P3. And then we have a huge crash for Cordial on lap 22. Brings out the safety car yet again. And now the advantage goes back to those guys on the alternative strategy. Into the pits from the lead comes Antonelli. We also get pit stops from Vasseur, Maini, Miata, Barnard, Villagomez, and Correa. They all pit now. Antonelli comes out in P5 on new soft tyres. He has about 10 laps to go from when the safety car is ending. The whole question here is, can he get the pace out of those soft tyres whilst making them last to the end? We saw yesterday how Antonelli pushed the soft tyres a bit too hard. It cost him in the end. Has he learned from yesterday to get on top here today? And let me tell you, yes, he has. So, safety car in on lap 27. By lap 28, Antonelli has gone from 5th to 3rd, passing both Hauger and Fittipaldi. A lap later, he's passed Bortoleto for P2, and a lap after that, he retakes the lead from Victor Martins and then builds a huge gap. Fantastic stuff from Antonelli. No doubt was helped by the safety car. Can't get around that. But you know what? The first safety car screwed him over. This addressed the balance. He built a fantastic gap on those hard tyres on the alternative strategy so that when he did pit, he only came out in P5 and was able to fight back from there. Fantastic stuff from Antonelli and some fantastic overtakes as well. Meanwhile, Vasseur, he has passed Hauger for P5. He is also on the alternative strategy after being disqualified from his race win yesterday. We've changed over to a timed race now, 4 minutes to go. Vasseur passes Fittipaldi for P3. Then, on the final lap, Richard Vasseur is able to pass Gabriel Bortoleto for the final podium position, P3. And then, as we cross the line, Antonelli wins his second F2 win, his first feature race win of the year. Victor Martins makes it back-to-back podiums in P2. Richard Verschoor in P3, and hopefully gets to keep it this time. Gabriel Bortoleto, a fantastic drive for him, but has to settle for P4. Fittipaldi is 5th, Hauger 6th, Miney 7th, Miata 8th, Taylor Barnard in 9th, and then Villa Gomez in 10th, the last of the points-taking drivers. Star of F2 goes to Kimi Antonelli, a star-making performance from Antonelli here. I've had my doubts about him, no doubt at all. I've questioned him many times as if I think he's ready for F1 or not, and it's still hard to say if he's ready for F1 or not, but with performances like that, you can't deny how good he has been throughout all this weekend. I know he cooked his tyres in the sprint, but there was moments of greatness there, and he definitely learnt from it, as we saw here in the feature. Fantastic stuff. Antonelli takes the win. There you go. That was a long video about Formula 2. So, we'll be back later on today for the F1. It will be a late one, though. Normally I'm here right after the races, but I'm out when the race is on, so I'm going to have to come back and try and find somewhere to watch it, if Now TV have it, or have to watch the Channel 4 highlights, wherever it might be. But there'll be a video at some point this evening talking all things F1, then driver ratings will be out tomorrow, so look out for all of that. Let me know what you thought of this race, what you think of Antonelli, what you think of the state of Formula 2, all that good stuff. I will see you next time. Until then, though, have a good one. Goodbye.